you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Big John here. Tonight, my guest is Jan Cruickshank, and I said it right there. And Jan's got a story. There's a lot of issues within a story that I have worked on or researched myself, and I'm just going to leave it to Jan. Jan, tell us what's happened.
Oh gosh, where do you want me to start?
From the beginning.
Right. Okay. I worked for CITB, which is the Construction Industry Training Board. I used to work for them in 2006, 2007, and then I moved abroad for a couple of years. When I came back, there was a vacancy within the company, so I applied and was re-employed with them. I loved my job. I used to manage apprentices all throughout their construction apprenticeships. Once I started working with the company the second time, there was a guy in the team who took a special interest to me. The second time that I worked with him, he was working in Aberdeen. He was originally from the Dundee area, but he was up working in Aberdeen, and he was staying overnight for setting up an event the following day. And I said to him, did he want to come for dinner at my house with my husband and my son, because there wasn't anywhere local for him to go out for something to eat. I thought it was a friendly gesture, just as I would do for any colleague who was working in my area. I invited him round. He had dinner with my husband Rob and I and my son, and then we had a few glasses of wine, and Rob and I walked him back down to his hotel, which was a mile away from our house. When we got back to our house, my husband said to me, "You've got a text message." And I said, "Oh," I said, "who's it from?" And he said, "This guy's name." Obviously, I can't name him, which I'll explain to you later. But Rob said the text message was from him. And I said, "Oh, what does it say?" Expecting it to say, "Thank you for a lovely evening," or "Thank you for a nice meal," or something. And Rob says to me, it says, "Fancy a fuck." And I burst out laughing, and I says, "No, it does not." I thought Rob was winding him up. I said, "It does not." I says, "What does it say?" And he turned the phone round, and that's exactly what the text message said. So I shook my head, and I said to my husband, "I think he's obviously had too much to drink." Went to our beds, didn't mention it again. The next day I was working with this man at the exhibition centre in Aberdeen. We were doing a careers event. And he said to me, "I think I drank too much last night." And I said to him, "Yes, I think you did." I said, "Because that text message you sent me was totally inappropriate." And he said, "What text message?" And pretended he didn't remember. So I told him what the message had said. And he says, "Oh God," he says, "Rob will kill me." He said, "He's a big lad." And I says, "No," I says, "Rob just thought the same as me. You drunk too much," and we laughed it off. I said, "Forget it." And he said, "So do you?" And I said, "Sorry." And he says, "So do you?" And I says, "No, I don't." I says, "I'm happily married. I'm not interested." And I said, "Anyway," I said, "I thought you were married." He said, "I am." He says, "But," he says, "it adds a bit of excitement to the relationship." And I says, "No, that's not my cup of tea." I says, "I've been with Rob since we were teenagers." I said, "And I don't need someone else to put excitement into my life." And I thought that was it. I thought I'd dealt with it. We carried on working like nothing had happened, and it wasn't mentioned again that day. I carried on working with him over the space of the next 3.5 years. He was intermittently professional and sometimes inappropriate, but because it was done over such a long period of time, I tended to excuse his behaviour. I didn't want to cause trouble. I didn't want to make waves, and I didn't want to get him into any trouble. I just thought that he was a nice guy that had poor boundaries. So I thought that in dealing with it myself, it wouldn't cause any issues. But each time that he was inappropriate, it got a little bit worse and a little bit worse. When he overstepped the line, I would say to him, "You've got no respect for me. Will you back off? I told you I'm not interested." And he said, "I can't help it. I think you look really sexy. You've got an amazing body for someone who's got 3 grown-up kids." I was flattered. It was nice to be complimented, but when it became sexual, when he's was saying things like, I visualise you bending over that table and what I could do to you in whatever positions and that. I would say to him, that's not on, it's not happening, just forget it. And I says to him, how would you like it if Rob spoke to your wife like that? And he says, Rob wouldn't do that because he doesn't fancy my wife. And I said, that's not the point. I said, you've got no respect for me. Well, anyway, it escalated. I was working with him at an event one Saturday. We were doing a outside event in a tent and that. And he was up staying in a hotel, and the company were mobile workers. So we met a lot of colleagues in hotels and things like that. It was nothing unusual to meet your colleagues in hotels. So I'd gone to meet him in the hotel in the morning to do the event, and he said, you're early. And I said, this is the time you told me to be here. He said, would you like a coffee before we go, because there is time? And I says to him, sure. I says, because I'm really needing the toilet anyway. I says, so I can get the toilet before we set off. So I went in, and if you go to hotels now, if you go to the restaurant, you've got to pay for your coffee now. Whereas if you go to someone's room, they've got the coffee making facilities not here. I didn't feel at all in danger. I just thought I had put him straight. I told him I wasn't interested, so I thought everything would be safe. I went to his room, I went to the toilet while he made a coffee, and when I came out of the toilet, there was only one chair in the room and his suitcase was sitting on it. So I sat on the edge of the bed while I was drinking the coffee, and I was just chatting away as I was drinking the coffee, and I noticed that he wasn't replying to me. So I turned around to see what he was doing, and he was standing in front of me with his trousers open and his penis exposed. And I almost spat the coffee across the room, and I said to him, whoa, what are you doing? And he stared at me, and he walked towards me and he said, touch it. And I said, no. I says, you're out of order and I'm leaving. And I stood up, and he hurriedly put himself back together and said, I'm so sorry, I just find you so sexy, I couldn't help it. And I says, you're out of order. I says, and I'm leaving now. Stupidly, he said he was sorry, so I went on and I worked with him again that day. And after that, he was back to normal. Then probably about a year later, there had been like lots of inappropriate comments during that year. But each time I had said to him, it's not happening, I'm not interested, and I'm not going to sleep with you, so forget it. And I just thought I'd dealt with it, and that he'd got the message. And then after about a year, we were working in Inverness. We had a 2-day conference. But during this time, he pretended to be my friend, and he used to still come to the house and have dinner with Rob and I. And I thought that he just had this poor boundaries. So, like I say, about a year later, we were working in Inverness, and he said to me, would you like a glass of wine? And it was about 4:30 in the afternoon. We'd finished the first day of the conference. And I said to him, well, yeah, maybe later. I says, but I don't drink really sort of like before tea time. And he says, oh, it's been a long day. You've driven all the way to Inverness. He says, you were up early this morning. The cars are all parked up. There's no reason for you not to have a drink. And I said, yeah, okay. I says, I'll have a wine then. So he came to my hotel room with a bottle of wine. And he handed me the bottle of wine, and he was wearing a suit, just dressed like a businessman. And I turned around to pour the 2 glasses.
Something froze there.
Yeah, she's frozen there, John. Must be bad internet.
Oh yeah, she might have had bad internet.
Yeah.
Oh my God, honestly.
What will probably happen? She'll probably disconnect in a second, and it'll come back on. Yeah, she's gone now. She'll come back in a second, hopefully. If it happens again, then ask Jan to turn off the webcam, and that would make it work smoother. Well, what a time for the internet to play up. It's shocking what I've heard so far.
So, I mean, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, I've talked to Jan already, but I mean, she told me the story, but not every detail like we're hearing now. But I mean, this isn't the worst of it, because she ended up reporting, and there's more to it from there. Well, I just didn't realise.
Let's hope she can get back on.
Of course not, Betty. But at the time of these things, you don't know what's going through your mind and stuff like that. And I've heard all kinds of things like this throughout my years. And you may not think that, you might think you've solved it and stuff like that. And obviously things go on from there, but let's just good evening, everyone. Anyway, I've got Jan Cruickshank on. She just started a story and been cut off, probably because the internet isn't too good anywhere at the moment. So we'll just have to wait for it to come back.
It could be her phone battery may have died, because it seemed okay, didn't it? It seemed quite good internet, and then just gone. So normally it buffers a bit if it's going to cut out, but that just disappeared all of a sudden. So you might be trying to get a phone charger and charge your phone up and everything.
I just want to let everyone know while we're waiting for Jan to come back, I'm on show, my YouTube channel tomorrow with a guest. I'll say who it is now. It's Tracy Blackwell, really good friend of mine who I've known now over the 2 years since the pre-boy's murder, and I've got her on my show on YouTube tomorrow. You can go to my channel, and I've already got a link up to the stream. Evening, Danny. So we'll be talking about where we first met, how we first met her, and progressing from the things that have happened during the 2 years. And I've been very vocal against anyone who's attacked Tracy. On video, and that I've made video. There's been videos made about me saying I've threatened people and stuff like that. But then videos have been made about Tracy without even any decent kind of evidence, on just hearsay and rubbish like that. So again, I've been a really strong supporter of Tracy's for the past 2 years. I've been on many demos, met up with her across the country, North East, Manchester, London, Birmingham.
Hi, John, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Jan. Yes, we can.
Sorry about that, my internet dropped out.
Don't worry, Jan. Internet's busy for everyone at the moment, so.
No, it was my fault. I hadn't charged the battery on my phone, and I used my phone as a router. It's plugged in now, though, so we should be safe.
I guess it might be that, because normally it buffers a little bit before people disconnect, and you just went all of a sudden, so I guessed it was the battery.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We heard you to the point where he came to the room with a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And you said you turned to pour some glasses of wine, I think, and then disconnected.
And I poured the glasses of wine, and when I turned around, he was standing in his boxer shorts. And I remember being shocked, and I was so shocked I burst out laughing because I thought it was so ridiculous that he had taken his clothes off. And then I looked at his feet, and I seen his bare feet, and I remember being so shocked at seeing his bare feet. I mean, the man was standing in his boxer shorts, and all I could think of was, you're not supposed to see your colleague's bare feet. He'd gone from having on a suit and a jacket, shoes and everything, to being standing there in a pair of boxers in the time it took me to pour 2 glasses of wine. I burst out laughing because I was so shocked, and he stepped forward and he grabbed a hold of me and he put his mouth over mine so I couldn't scream. And it was like someone had taken the paddles of a defibrillator and shocked my body, and I felt like it shocked me right out of my body, and I couldn't do anything. I just froze. I was so frightened. He was 10 inches taller than me, about 5 stone heavier than me, and I was just petrified. So my being, my soul, me, hovered somewhere at the bottom of the bed and watched this man abuse my body. And he raped me, and there was not a thing I could do. And when he was done, he said, "Are you okay?" Because he must have known that there was no way. I had been telling him for 3.5 years that it would never happen. He must have known by the fact that there was no consent, there was no enthusiasm, there was no participation on my part. And when he was finished, I was so numb. I could just remember tears rolling down my cheeks, and he said to me, "Are you okay?" And I just nodded, and he left. And I ran a bath, and I sat in the bath desperate to get clean. And I kept thinking, how did that happen? Why did you let him do that to you? And I just wanted to be sick. And then I had to get out of the bath water because the bath water felt contaminated. So I stood up and I put on a shower, and I was washing the bath water off of myself to try and get clean. And as soon as the bath emptied, I put the plug back in and sat down and run a bath again to try and wash the bits of me that the shower wouldn't reach. And I was sobbing, and I kept thinking, this is what people on TV do when they've been raped. But in my mind, when I'd seen rape on Crime Watch, it was things that strangers did with knives and weapons. It wasn't something that your friend did to you. So I was so confused and so shocked and so ashamed and so dirty. And all I could think of was, no one will ever know what he's done to me. I vowed I would never tell a soul. So I got out of the bath and the shower, and I dried myself, and I got dressed, and I went to meet the rest of our colleagues for dinner like nothing had happened, because I didn't want anybody to know. And I was so ashamed and so disgusted, and I just thought I could pretend it had never happened. But I couldn't. I went home the following day after the second day of the conference, and Rob and I mean, we've always had a good sex life and art together, but I didn't want him to touch me. I didn't want anyone to touch me. I thought if he touched me, he would know. I thought he would somehow sense that I was different. I felt like I was walking around with a big neon sign above my head saying dirty. And when I came home, the first thing I did was open a bottle of wine. And Rob says, "It's a bit early for wine, is it?" And I says to him, "It's been a long couple of days and I just need something to drink." And then over the next few weeks, Rob became concerned, and he said, "Why are you drinking so much?" I just got into the habit of getting up, going to work, doing my job, coming home, drinking, so that it would blot out and I didn't have to think about things, and then I could go to bed. And if I drank enough, it would knock me out, so I would sleep. And then the next day, I would have to be sober and go to work and just carry on. The man that did this to me suddenly decided he didn't want to be my friend anymore because he'd achieved his goal. He'd done what he'd set out to do. But I was confused and I was angry, And I wanted to know why he'd done it to me when he knew that it wasn't what I wanted. So I demanded answers from him, and he says to me, I can't speak to you because my wife thinks we're having an affair and she's going to tell Rob. And I said, well, tell her we're not having an affair, because we're not. And he says she's going to tell Rob, she's going to get in touch with him and she's going to tell him. So I emailed his wife and I says to her, I'm not having an affair with your husband. I've never had an affair with your husband. I'm not even attracted to him. Please stop stalking me and leave me alone. And he then phoned me and said, you've made her worse. She's going to go and see a solicitor. She's got my daughter looking up your Facebook. She's looking for Rob's details so she can tell him. I didn't realise at the time that this man was a narcissist and he was just gaslighting me to scare me away. I was distraught. I already felt filthy over what he'd done to me. And I desperately would have done anything rather than have anybody know what he'd done. So I emailed his wife again and said, it's not me, it's him. This is what he's been doing. He's been sending me filth, and he'd sent me a picture of his erection at one stage as well. So I forwarded it on to his wife and I said, this is what he's sending me. I'm not interested in him. And he again was winding me up, and I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. And I thought I was coping with it just by drinking to not have to think about it. But then about 3 months after Inverness, I suffered a really serious house fire. And when my house went up in fire, I burst into tears. And Rob says to me, why are you crying? And I said, because our house is on fire. And he said, it's only a house, we've got insurance, don't worry about it. But once the floodgates had opened, I couldn't stop crying. And he said, why are you crying? And I kept saying, it's a house fire, it's a house fire. But then the builders came in to fix the house, and I was still crying every night. And Rob wanted answers. He wanted to know why I was so upset. And I says, I can't tell you. I just can't, because I didn't want him to see the dirt in me that I felt. But when the house had gone on fire, in a way, it was a blessing, because I had to go to the doctor because I had suffered a breakdown. I needed to be signed off work. I didn't know if we were going to be living in a house while it was repaired, so I needed a doctor's line. When I went to the doctor, I burst into tears, and I said to her, I can't do it anymore. And I told her what this man had done to me, and I begged to be STI tested because I felt so filthy. I got the tests done, and they fortunately came back clear, but it didn't stop me feeling dirty. And I still couldn't tell Rob, and it took me a few weeks until I could actually tell him what had happened. By this stage, I had raised a grievance at work because I had always told my boss that this man at work had been a bit of a sex pest. And my boss had said to me, do you want me to do anything? And I says, no, it's okay. I says, I think I can handle it myself. So when I'd gone off sick, my boss had taken this man aside and said to him, John's off with stress and it hasn't helped because you've been sexually harassing her. So he then said to my boss, I didn't sexually harass her, we've been having an affair for 3 years, and she's a jilted lover who's trying to get me into trouble. And he took the emails that I sent to his wife and said that that was me harassing his family because he'd ended an affair. It was never an affair. I raised a grievance and said that he had been sexually harassing me. I had this photo that he'd sent me. I had the text message still on my phone. I had evidence that he had been pestering me for a long time. He'd also sent me a text message saying, you're beautiful, sexy and funny, but unfortunately you're happily married and out of my reach. He sent me this text message when he claimed I was having an affair with him. And I said to my employer, why would he send me that if I was having an affair with him? Why would he send me a message saying I was happily married and out of his reach? CITB ignored everything that I gave them as evidence, and I had been signed off sick because I was then diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Rape crisis, wrote 3 reports to CITB backing up my version of events, saying that I was traumatised, I was suffering from post-traumatic stress. I was suicidal, because I went through 11 months of grievance procedures where CITB repeatedly told me I was a liar. I wanted it all to stop. I just wanted to end my life because I couldn't deal with it anymore. Eventually, CITB sacked me. They never ever suspended him. He was a careers advisor who worked in schools, and they allowed him to carry on working in schools pending the grievance. And I have since done subject access requests to CITB and discovered that before they had even heard my appeal, they had already instructed payroll to adjust my pension for when I was sacked. So before they'd even heard my evidence, they had decided I was going to be dismissed. Unite the Union decided that they would take on my case because I had been a Unite member for a few years. Initially, the CITB didn't have a Unite rep, and I got a GMB member who was a CITB member of staff. He represented me to start with at the beginning of the grievance procedure. When it became evident that CITB were against me and weren't taking me seriously, I got in touch with Unite's full-time rep, and he said to me, "Have you reported this to ACAS?" And I said, "I didn't know I had to report it to ACAS." And he said, "When was the last time this man had sexually harassed you?" And I said, "May." He says, "Oh, you're out of time now, you can't claim it." So Unite initially told me that legally they wouldn't represent me because I had let the case go out of time, even though I was still going through the grievance procedure at work. However, when CITB then went ahead and sacked me for it, it then gave me a better case because I could have unfair dismissal and sex discrimination, because they claimed I had an affair with this man and misused company time, and they sacked me and not him. So that's what gave me a case. The union rep had then written to the legal department. They decided I had a case, and they agreed to represent me. But it was very clear from the onset that the Unite solicitor was only interested in getting a settlement. And I said to her, "I don't want a settlement. I want to go to court because I want justice." I said, I'm telling the truth. I said, and I've got evidence to prove that I'm telling the truth. I said, the only thing I'm guilty of is being naive and trusting that this man was harmless. And they said, "But he'd sent you a picture of his penis. He'd exposed himself to you. Why on earth would you allow him in your hotel room?" And I said, "Because that was all done over a 3.5-year period, and there was long periods of time in between that where he was perfectly normal, and he laughed and he joked and he pretended to be my friend." And I says, "I didn't think he meant me any harm at all. I had no idea that things would go to the extent that they did." I gave CITB reports from Rape Crisis saying that I was suffering from trauma after being groomed and raped by a sexual predator at work, and CITB said I was a liar. And the union were only interested in getting me a token payment. The union solicitor said to me, "Why don't you just accept this money and have a nice holiday with your husband? He sounds like a better bet than this other man." And I went, "There was never a choice. I never ever chose anything with the man at work." I said, "I just wanted to go to work and do my job, and I was good at my job. I had excellent appraisals until I raised a sexual harassment grievance, and then all of a sudden these trumped up charges appeared out of nowhere. I was told that I'd been misusing company time and equipment, and all of I was given bonuses for being ahead of my work. My appraisals were excellent, saying that I was above and beyond where I should have been." And I said to them, "So where did I find time to do this work if I was misusing company time? How could you grant me pay rises saying they've exceeded expectations if I'm misusing company time?" They just ignored me. When I told them that I was feeling suicidal, they removed me from the computer system and totally isolated me, didn't speak to me for months. The treatment that they put me through was inhumane. It was horrendous, and my family had to go through the worst time ever watching me fall to pieces while I was called a liar for reporting sexual harassment. The legal case was dragged out I was sacked. I raised the grievance in June 2015. I was sacked in May 2016, and the case settled out of court in November 2018. And throughout that whole time, I was told that if I spoke to anyone, I would be dismissed. And then after they dismissed me, I was told by the solicitor I couldn't speak to anyone because it would jeopardise my case. So being called a liar, being isolated from your workmates, taking away a job that I loved, taking away my income, the company car, everything was taken from me and I wasn't allowed to speak. So when the case finally settled, I vowed that I would tell everyone what they had done to me because it was so unfair and unjust. And I didn't want to accept a settlement, but I was told that the Unite Union had a discretionary funding scheme and that they would only fund a case so far. In December 2017, I was told to accept 44,000 and sign confidentiality. And if I didn't do it, the union would, they would be minded to withdraw the funding for my case. That was in December 2017. In January 2018, the Me Too movement hit the press. And I woke up in the morning at the beginning of January and I thought, this is wrong. I shouldn't be silenced when so many women are speaking out and saying, this is wrong, it shouldn't be happening. So I emailed the head of the union and said to him, I'm going to go public when this is all over. And I need you to decide which side you want to be seen to be on. Because I said, if I go public, I said, I will tell the whole world, I said, that you threatened me with withdrawing funding. I said, and how many female Unite members do you think you will retain when they discover that you won't fully back their members to court? And I says, I'm not threatening you. I says, I'm just telling you, if you don't support me, then I will make sure people know that you didn't support me. So the guy that I spoke to was Neil Gillum. I think he was head of the Unite Legal Department. And I feel like I had backed him into a corner. And he said, okay, because of the seriousness of your case, we'll continue to support you. But if CITB increase their offer, then we'll have to back down. So eventually CITB increased their offer to £50,000. And my union solicitor told me if I didn't accept it, that Unite were out, they wouldn't support me anymore. I said to them, I'll only accept it if there's no confidentiality at all. I says, because I will not be gagged. I says, no one will ever take my voice from me. So she managed to negotiate to get no confidentiality whatsoever. She wasn't happy. She was angry at me for insisting on it. By the end of my legal case, she was barely speaking to me. I felt that my own solicitor wasn't even on my side. I felt bullied, isolated, pressured because I had no job and I was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I couldn't get another job because I wasn't in the right mental state. I didn't want another employer to ever have that power over me again. I was then £30,000 in debt because I'd had no income for more than 2 years. And I was petrified I was going to lose my house. So eventually I had to accept the offer just so that I could get out of debt and give my family a little bit of respite because it was killing them as well. And I feel that although my case settled and people say to me, well, it's your own fault you signed it, I wasn't really given a choice. That it was either sign the document, take the money, and I could then speak, or else I faced going to court, to an employment tribunal with a privately funded solicitor. I did get a quote from someone else to represent me. It was a 10-day employment tribunal because it was so complicated. The solicitor wanted £2,000 per day plus VAT, plus expenses for the duration of the employment tribunal, which would have easily eaten into 30,000. I was already 30,000 in debt. And I thought, if I push this and go to employment tribunal, even though I know I'm telling the truth, you're never guaranteed a win. And I thought, if I go to tribunal and lose, I'll lose my house. And I couldn't do it to my family. So there was my choices. But I realised I was in a broken system. and I couldn't see another way out of it. So then I went ahead. Once I could speak, I made videos and speak out quite vocally on Twitter and social media, because I want people to know that it's not just as easy as telling when something's wrong, because sometimes when you speak out, you're actually penalised for it. So that's my story.
Oh, Jan, honestly, I don't know what to say, but I mean, I've been an activist for 4 years, and I hear a lot of this kind of stuff that's happened to people that they're innocent. They try to speak out, and then they're made to be the victims. And I think a lot of people in the chat here will know that through other issues we've had with people in the past and stuff like that. And I mean, Unite the Union, I think, is one of the biggest unions in the UK, and they like funded the Labour Party last year for 12 million. So it's not like they haven't got any money, you know, and you would expect the union to be helping the person who's made the complaint. You know, that's the minimum thing. That's what they're there for, the unions. It might have been in the old days, I said about this, but now they're politically motivated and stuff like that. And I don't think they really care about the people who
I think I was a statistic, and I think that getting an out of court settlement was seen as a victory to them. When, how could it have been a victory to me? I've lost my career. I mean, so far I'm over £120,000 out of pocket in lost earnings. And I was raped at work, and they failed to protect me. They had a duty of care to protect me. And when I told them that they had failed to protect me, because I had told my manager that this man was sexually harassing me, and he said, but Jan said she didn't want any help. That wasn't my choice to make. When they realised that they had a sexual predator in the workplace, they should have taken the matter out of my hands, and they should have dealt with it. Whether I thought I was dealing with it or no, I had no idea how manipulative this man was. I had no idea how devious. He wore a suit, he smiled nice, he held doors open for people. So therefore, when I said he had raped me, people just went, no, not him, no, definitely not. But some of the guys at work said, yeah, he's a sleaze. Everybody knows he's a sleaze. There was another girl at work who he had sexually harassed, and he used to call her Psycho. And she spoke to me online one night, and I said to her, is this man doing this to you as well? And she says, no, thankfully he stopped. And I said, how long did he send you dirty text messages for? And she says, probably about 14 years. And I said to her, 14 years? I said, seriously? And she says, oh yeah, but she says, don't get me wrong. She says, when he's not doing that, he can be so nice, he's so charming. And I thought, that's exactly what he did to me. But when I raised the grievance, he had obviously gotten to her and given her a different version of events, because when she was interviewed during the grievance, she said, no, he's never been inappropriate to me. And I produced a copy of the conversation I had with her on Messenger, saying he'd sent her these messages for 14 years. And I says to her, humour me. I says, what kind of thing does he send you? And she says, oh, he sends me things like he visualises me bending over a table, what he would do to me, what kind of things he'd like me to be wearing, what kind of shoes and things like that. And I said, yeah, that's the kind of things he's sending me as well. When it came to the grievance meeting, she said, oh no, I was just winding Jan up. He's never done anything like that. I just felt absolutely betrayed.
Honestly, Jan, I'm so sorry. You have to tell your story. I mean, no one, if we don't talk about what's happened, and nobody's going to listen, and you know, like you'll always feel worse. But you know, like you have to talk to people. I know, you know. But like PTSD. So I worked alongside veterans to do with PTSD, and even I thought that like it really affected people who were in the army until I did my research. And it can affect anybody who's been through a traumatic experience just like you have.
I think being raped is bad enough. Being told that you've lied about it is soul destroying. I had episodes, I couldn't leave a house for a long time afterwards. I would have a panic attack in the middle of Tesco. And I mean, believe you me, I'm one of the best shoppers ever. I loved shopping, even food shopping. But I mean, afterwards, I wouldn't leave a house. I think the few weeks that I lived in denial, where I tried to blot it out with alcohol, although I was drinking a lot of the time, being in denial was a lot easier than actually having to tell, because once I told, I had to face up to it, and I couldn't cope. I used to spend hours sitting in a corner on the floor in the kitchen, huddled up in a ball, because it was the only place I felt safe. Rob used to say to me, let's go for a walk up to the end of the road. I mean, we live in the middle of nowhere, and he would say, just come out and get some fresh air. And I would get about 100 yards along the track, and then my stomach would feel like I was going to be sick, and I would have a panic attack, and I would walk round and round in circles, and I would say, I need to sit down, I need to sit down. And he would say, well, just sit down. I felt as though somebody pulled the plug out and I was going down the drain. Another night, my son was messing around, and he stood in the doorway and he says, you're not going past. And I started screaming hysterically, and my son looked at me and he was like, whoa, that's a bit of an overreaction. But it was just the panic that I was trapped. It was somebody taking the control away from me again. And I was petrified, and I burst into tears, and I sobbed like when you see these African tribes and they're mourning and they scream out at them. I was like that. And I could hear the screams, and I was so shocked because I didn't realise it was coming from me. And then the more upset I got, I couldn't control it at all. And Rob was beside himself, and he was saying, John, what can I do? What can I do? And I said, just phone 999 and get me committed. I said, because at least they'll sedate me. I said, I need someone to sedate me to take this away. And I'm ashamed when I think of that now. But I couldn't cope. And I mean, during this stage, I was being hauled into hearings at CITB for 5.5 hours, where they sat and continuously questioned, what was I wearing? How had I behaved? I was told, and I have this in writing because it was in a minuted meeting, when I said about him exposing himself to me in a hotel room when I'd gone for a coffee, she says to me, did you say no? And I said, and I thought, yeah, someone gets their bits out, you don't go, no. I says to her, I told him he was out of order and I was leaving. And she says, well, perhaps it was necessary for you to say no more than once. And I thought, never at any stage did anyone say to him it was necessary for him not to take his penis out at work. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They said that because I had had a laugh and a joke during team meetings and everything, that I was consenting to his behaviour. They said because I allowed him into my hotel room that I was consenting to his behaviour. The letter that I received from Gillian Kane, who was head of apprenticeships at the time, she wrote me a letter saying that as I had agreed to share a wine with him, she believed the sex was consensual. Wow. And I thought, that's what it says. I still have the letter. As you agreed to share a wine with him, we believe the sex was consensual. And I thought, if that was the case, every pub would be an orgy. And I couldn't believe how they treated me. I thought I was a respected, well-liked member of staff until I raised this issue against this man who has carried on with his career. He took early retirement a month after I was sacked, but he's carried on working in the industry. He's moved from different firms. He's moved house. He's bought a new car. He's getting on with his life. He received no punishment whatsoever, and my life is ruined. I mean, even now, financially, I have no job. I have no income. It's putting an immense pressure on my husband to have to meet all the bills. I don't think I should have to sell my house and downsize because of what this man's done to me. I would like to find a new career. I would like to get on and rebuild my life. I don't want him to ruin what's left of my life. But I'm also angry that the system has failed me. I mean, even if I'd gone to employment tribunal, awards at employment tribunals are usually in the region of about £15,000. That doesn't compensate you for losing your livelihood. it doesn't compensate me for leaving me so damaged that I can never trust another employer. It's left me feeling that anyone who criticises me now will be immediately on the defensive because I need to be trusted. And when a company that I really sold their company because I believed in them, and when you believe in someone and you trust someone, to have all of that taken away is horrendous, and the cruel way they did it as well, that I wouldn't wish it in my worst enemy.
You know, we're supposed to be in a society. In Oldham and in Manchester, we had some of the first suffragettes within England who fought for women's rights, and we get told that we're in an equal society, but obviously it's not equal. It's not equal. It's not an equal society. And where they said that like women have the same rights as men, women don't have the same rights as men.
They don't.
And
if you've ever, I mean, I did report this man to the police as well, but the police basically said it was his word against mine. They said, because you don't have any evidence, because I didn't report it straight away. And I says, no, I do have evidence. And they said, but we would need something like the bed sheets or your underwear. And I said, I've still got the underwear. And they said, we would need it in unwashed condition. And I says, do you think that I was ever going to put my hands near our underwear ever again? I said, when I came home from Inverness, I says, I put it in a bag, I says, and threw it in the bottom of the wardrobe. It wasn't washed. Now, if you're having an affair with someone, you don't keep unwashed underwear as a souvenir. I was so disgusted that I never wanted to see the underwear ever again. And I was scared to put it in the bin in case Rob said, why's your underwear in the bin? I didn't know what to do with it. So I put it in the bottom of the wardrobe and I gave it to the police and I said, you can have the underwear. I said, it's there, it's unwashed. The police didn't even test it. They came back and said to me that they weren't disputing the fact that intercourse took place. It was just whether or not it was consensual that they were disputing. The sexual offences liaison officer said to me that 7 weeks after I had given my statement, she phoned me up and asked me for this man's phone number so they could phone him and invite him in for a chat. They didn't even go and lift him. They phoned him and invited him to come in for a chat. He went in, he gave a no comment interview, and they turned around and said that it was my word against his, even though he'd said nothing. And the CID officer, when I first gave him a statement, said that because I had the indecent image he'd sent me, they could charge him with that because there was enough evidence there. The solo officer said to me that he was released without charge. And I said, what about the indecent image? I was told that he could be charged for that. And she says, no, she says, there's not enough evidence. And I said, the CID officer told me that it had his IP address and it had his email address, and that was enough evidence because the image was there as well. And she said, but who's to say he's the one that actually pressed the button? And I says to her, he lives with his wife and his daughter. Who would you suggest emailed me a picture of his penis from his computer? And she says, don't try and tell me how to do my job, John. And that's the sympathy you get from Police Scotland.
Oh my God, honestly. I mean, I used to have confidence in some confidence in the police, but I don't. Past 4 years, and I've seen what's going on, I don't really have any confidence. So,
well, I mean, I'm of the generation that we were brought up to respect the police.
Yeah, of course, yeah, same with me.
But I don't know. I don't trust them at all. The man that did this to me had bragged that he was a past master Freemason. During the grievance procedure, he said, I'm a past master Freemason. I do charity work. I'm not the sexual predator she's making me out to be. He says, I'm not Gary Glitter or Jimmy Savile.
Yeah, you mentioned the Freemasons. Now, I don't know much about the Freemasons. I know it's like a collective group, and I've heard stories that, like, with other Freemason friends, people could get further up the ladders in the career, and I'm guessing, obviously, get off charges or publicity and stuff like that. Again, I'm not an expert, but there is other people within Wake Up UK do know more about the Freemasons, and you found out it was linked to the Freemasons. It said this and all that lot, like it was a pass for him to get away with stuff. I just it's just ridiculous how from all angles you failed by the police, your works, your union, and everyone involved in the case. And you know,
I complained about the police and the way they handled it, because when they came to take my initial statement, I was distraught. I had only just told Rob that morning, and I phoned the police because I knew that what he'd done to me was wrong, but I couldn't find the right words to say it because I still kept blaming myself for allowing it to happen. It wasn't until I contacted Rape Crisis and they said to me, could you have stopped him? And I said, no. And she says, well, that's rape. She says, that's not you giving in to him. She says, if he did it and you didn't consent, and she says, you don't even have to say no, as long as you didn't say yes. And I said, well, I definitely didn't consent to it. When the police came to my house, it had just been after it was a really serious fire, and the fire brigade had isolated the electricity in my house, so I had no electricity. The police came to the house and took a statement from me for 10 hours. I had nothing to eat for 24 hours because I hadn't eaten anything before I'd phoned the police because I was so upset. She took a 10-hour statement without a break. And as it got darker, because it was 11:30 at night that she left, and as it got darker in the evening, she lit her torch and took my statement by torchlight. It was 35 pages long, and at the end she says to me, do you want to read it? And I thought, I was in such a state. I says, no. I said, trust you, just give me, I'll sign it. I just wanted her to go away so I could speak to Rob. I didn't know how he was coping with the news I had just told him, and I wanted her to go away. I mean, I thought when the police came, they would have spoke to me for a couple of hours and gone. I didn't expect 10 hours of an interrogation where she tried to put words in my mouth. When I told her about sitting in the bath and sobbing, and I said I was confused, and I thought this is what people on TV do when they've been raped. And I says, but I kept thinking it couldn't have been rape because he didn't hurt me, he didn't have a weapon. And she says, so you mean you just regretted it? And I says, oh, no. I says, she says, you felt like you regretted it? I says, no, I felt like I was raped. And I'm glad I had the hindsight to correct her at that bit, because I hadn't read that statement back again. When they called him and invited him in for a chat, he was at the station for 2 hours. I was questioned for 10, and he walked away with no charges. When I reported Police Scotland, PIRC, which is the Police Investigation Review Commissioners in Scotland, they investigated my report and came back with a finding that upheld all of my complaints, that I hadn't had a proper investigation, that I hadn't been treated fairly, and I hadn't been referred on to Rape Crisis by the police, which they're supposed to do as a matter of course. So they came back and upheld all of my complaints, and I got 3 apology letters from Police Scotland. One of the officers works in the Aberdeen police station had actually gone into my file and read it and told one of the apprentices that I deal with what was in my file. This apprentice came back and told me things that I had reported. So I complained and said there had been a breach of the Data Protection Act because an officer had, and they came back and said, we checked it out, nobody's breached anything, he hasn't done anything wrong. But this apprentice got drunk one night and rung me. She was really abusive on the phone, and I switched on my dictaphone and recorded the call, where she named the police officer and said that he didn't get into trouble because she had lied to the police and said that he'd done nothing wrong. And I gave the recording to the police and said, there you go, this is the apprentice admitting who told her, admitting what he told her, and saying that she had lied to you. And the police came back and said, she's not a reliable witness, so there's still no evidence that data protection's been breached. I mean, seriously, there wasn't one single department that actually did anything right. It was so corrupt throughout the whole lot of it that if I was to write a book, I would have to make it fiction because no one would believe that all of these things could happen.
Jan, honestly, we believe, honestly, we believe. I mean, so how long have you been married to Rob?
We've been together since we were teenagers. We got married in July 1984, so quite a while.
And he supported you through all this. It must have been stressing for Rob as well, all this.
Well, there is a video on my YouTube site where I've interviewed Rob and asked him how he felt when he was going through it. And the video doesn't even last like 30 seconds because he broke down. Because, I mean, he's a strong man. But I mean, this would test the patience of a saint. And the worst bit is, I was in a position that he wanted me to tell him what had happened because he wanted me to be honest. But seriously, no man wants to hear what another man's done to his wife. So I was then in a position that I thought, if I tell him, it's going to hurt him. And if I don't tell him, he's going to think I'm hiding something. It's an impossible situation to be in. And I said to him, I've tried to be honest with you, but without trying to like be brutal either. But at one stage I did, before the union took the case, I did seek legal advice from the law clinic, which is at Robert Gordon's University. And it's basically law students who are practicing taking cases, and a lecturer oversees the advice that they give to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So I kept in touch with the solicitor, the lecturer from the Robert Gordon's University, and I told him that I would, once the union took the case, that I would keep in touch and let him know the conclusion. And at the end of it, he asked me, would I come into the university and give a talk to the law students on the impact of how a solicitor deals with a client and how it impacts them. And I said, sure. So I went into the university and did a 90-minute talk to them. And Rob came with me and he sat by my side. And at the end of it, the lecturer said, do you mind if I ask Rob something? And I said, on you go. And he said, Rob, can I ask you how it made you feel? And Rob says, it's horrendous. He said, I pity every single woman out there that has to go through this and isn't believed. And he said, and if I could say one thing, he says, throughout it all, never once did I doubt John's version of events. And that, to me, meant everything.
Oh, honestly, I just don't get it, me. I don't get it. What kind of world we live in? So the link to the Freemasons. Did you say he was a Freemason in the past, or he was a Freemason?
I think he still is a Freemason. He was openly bragging about being a Freemason, and I used to think that I thought Freemasonry was a secret kind of club, so I couldn't understand. I think he even actually had business cards printed with his like past master Freemason, and he's currently the treasurer of his lodge. And if you can go onto the lodge website and you can see that he's treasurer there still. So, but I mean, I distinctly got the impression that someone within the police force was blocking anything going further. And I mean, I have got some friends that know police officers, and I have been told that he is being protected. But then that's just hearsay. There's nothing I can do to prove that.
Oh, God, honestly. Jan, I don't know what to say. I mean, again, we're supposed to have like respect, like, and everyone's supposed to be equal. But in my journey over the past 4 years, nobody's equal. You know, no, absolutely nobody's equal. And as far as I'm concerned, the working class, people like me and you, are just trashed on. We're not worth anything. You know, if something happens to us, nobody listens to us. This is why I'm such an active activist, and it's why I get into these things, because I'm just not having that we're treated, you know, like this. I'm not having it. I've looked into Unite the Union and other like organisations, lefty organisations, I'll call them, and they're absolutely full of this kind of discrimination against people. Nothing ever gets said, nothing ever gets done. I've done a lot of work on a particular inquiry into child sexual exploitation in Rotherham, and one of the first things that comes up is the misogyny, discrimination against women, sexism into this inquiry. And you know, I just don't understand why it's like this. Why do we have such a like?
Our legal system's it's a sham. It's an absolute sham, because he will always be innocent until proven guilty, whereas a victim is a liar until she can prove otherwise. And that's wrong. I mean, in no other crime, I mean, if you phoned and reported your car had been stolen, no one would say to you, are you sure you actually had a car? You didn't just give it away, did you? I mean, it's ridiculous. And I find that even the sexual harassment policies within the workplace, CITB has got a really thorough sexual harassment policy, but it's not worth the paper it's written on if they can just turn around and say, we don't believe you. Because they knew that they could just sack me, and they knew that I was telling the truth because I could evidence it. And but they knew that legally it's all about which position you're in, who has the most power and who can do the most damage. And they knew fine that if they sacked me, I either wouldn't have the money to fight them, because most people work because they need the money. So if they take away your job, you've got no money to fight back. And they also knew that even as a union member, they negotiate with the union for a settlement just to make the problem go away. So at no point were CITB held accountable for almost killing me. And that's wrong. The system is broken. And even if I had gone to employment tribunal, the system there isn't adequate to compensate someone for losing their livelihood. I mean, nowhere have I been compensated for any of the damage that was done to me. And that's why I'm so vocal now, because things need to change, because it's wrong. I mean, you have no such thing as employee rights when an employer can just dismiss you and then pay to make a problem go away. And that's wrong. And I stand beside you. I'll be vocal too.
Honestly, we're all. I'm always fighting against it. It's just I'm just not having it, me. To my core, and I've been in trouble. I've had the police and counter-terrorism visit me for things I've said on social media, but you know, I meant them. I meant them things that I said on social media, because no one else is doing anything for us. No one else supports us. The police, they don't really. I'll go along with them, but I still give them an hard time when I'm doing speeches at demonstrations. I'm pointing at the police, blaming them for half the things that are going on. I do it all the time, and they don't like it, but it's just tough, you know. Until things change and we get a better justice system, people are looked after, there's equal rights for everyone. I'm not going to stop fighting. And I know you won't, Jan, because you've made videos, you've gone onto social media, you've gone onto Twitter. I've
written to MPs. I've been to MPs meetings with them as well. I've gone along to their sessions and I've spoken to them, because I've said, this is wrong. This is wrong. That, I mean, I tried everywhere for help. And I think that's the biggest obstacle, is no one knows where to go to find the help. And when I go to MPs, they just say, oh, you're not in my constituent, it's nothing to do with me. I emailed the Women's Equality Minister. She said, there's nothing really I can do about it. Why don't you try the Department of Education? Try the Department of Education. And they said, we'll get back to you. And then I tried the National Audit Office, because CITB are government funded. And I thought, surely it can't be ethical for the government to pay to cover up sexual harassment. And I thought, because that's what they're doing, they're using government money to pay. I mean, they paid me 60,000 before tax, but it was 50,000 when the tax came off of it. So how can it be ethical to use £60,000 of taxpayers' money to hide sexual harassment? And it doesn't matter who I contact. I contacted the National Audit Office and they said it's not in their remit. it's not covered. And they pass you on to the next one, who passes you on to the next one. And the buck has to stop somewhere. Somebody must be accountable for this. And I did say at the start of this interview that I couldn't name him. And it's just because the police wouldn't charge him. So if I name him, he can sue me for defamation of character. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that I was publicly dismissed and my reputation has been ruined because CITB went out to stakeholders telling them that I was a bunny boiler who had an affair and then split out the dummy. And I thought, I've never, ever cheated on my husband in all the years we've been together because he's the love of my life. I didn't want anyone else. And I just think that it's okay to ruin my reputation and my career and my everything that I had, but I can't name him because the police wouldn't take me seriously. And when I did the subject access request, I also found out that CITB and the police were emailing one another. And one of the copies of the emails was from CITB to the police saying that I had been in a long-standing consensual relationship with him and it had ended badly, and that's why I had reported it. So CITB lied to the police. And I said to the police, it's in their best interest to discredit me because they've sacked me. So if it comes out that he's actually a rapist, I said, I have a better case in court against them. I said, so of course they're going to say that I'm a liar. But it's a vicious circle. It didn't matter. Whoever I tried to turn to, I hit a brick wall. And I thought, and that's wrong. And I will keep speaking out about this because I know that once I put it on social media, people had contacted me saying, this happened to me too. And if I had only been in it for the money, I would have kept my mouth shut and kept my job because financially I would be in a much better situation. I mean, if I'd been a spiteful bitch who had just had an affair, surely I could have keyed his car or something. I wouldn't have been. I mean, people don't have mental breakdowns because they've had an affair and somebody's dumped them. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all.
No, the odds are so stacked against you. Honestly, tomorrow I'm doing a show on my YouTube channel with a woman whose boy and whose son and two other lads were murdered. And the same things that you're saying, she said. She wrote to her MPs, no one listened to her. She went to the police, nobody listened to her. And I'm just not having it, me. I'm not having it to the very fibre of my bone. I will end up getting arrested for supporting and protesting people just like you, Jan. You know what I mean? And I'm not frightened to. I know it. I just know it's going to happen. Like I said, I've had counter-terrorism come to my door and want to speak to me and over things that I've said on social media. And I'm not going to not say them. I'm going to still say these things. When we have protests, I'm telling people names of people who've been involved in cases, you know, because I know I can name them and stuff like that. And every fibre of my being knows it's wrong. What do we do? How are we going to change things? We have to change the way our government works. We have to change the law.
I'm trying as hard as I can. I'm emailing, and I still haven't given up. I'm still contacting MPs, solicitors. I've tried contacting the Me Too movement because I think this is a classic case. But this is the type I think they should be supporting. But I find even the Me Too movement is just about funding charities which have got no power to do anything with it. I must admit, Scottish Women's Rights Centre were a great help to me. They've been fantastic. But again, most people wouldn't help me because I had union support. And at one point, once I'd been sacked, I'd gone to see a private solicitor, and I got legal aid because I didn't have a job. And then, of course, Unite the Union had taken a while to make up their mind whether or not they were going to fund my case. And when they turned around and said yes, because I'd been sacked, they would take a case on. So then I lost my legal aid because I had union. And I thought, it was, I suppose, with hindsight, the union did help me initially. The full-time rep, he was really nice and supportive at meetings because CITB ripped me to shreds. And if I hadn't had a union rep there beside me, I would have felt really isolated and alone. I also went to these meetings with a representative from Rape Crisis. Now, Rape Crisis do not give you support at meetings if they think you're telling lies. It's just, they just don't do it. And all I can say is Rob has been fantastic. And if I didn't have his support, I wouldn't be here, because I was suicidal so many times. And he was the only thing that kept me going.
Oh, honestly, respect to Rob. Honestly, such respect to Rob. I mean, I've watched all your videos on your YouTube. I've put the link in the chat, and I've watched a bit where Rob's talking, and I would get upset, Jan. I've cried before, and I've been upset when I've talked about things, and I've been with people. The two lads who were on before you were on, Bobby and Joseph Blair, were abused by a Catholic priest when they were kids. You know what I mean? And I've cried shoulder by shoulder with them too. And I don't know what to say. How do we work out? What do we say about these Freemasons? And what I'll do, there is more people on this channel who know more about Freemasonry than I do, and I'll talk to some of them, and I'll get some. I'll do another show, and we'll discuss the Freemasons. I'm going to look more into it since you told me that he had links to Freemasonry, and I will do more stuff on it. But I mean, my goal is to change the government. We want equal rights for everybody, but it just doesn't seem like that now. The more I look into things, and you must have seen this as you've gone through all this trauma. You've just seen that things are just not equal where you thought they were. You know, it just someone here saying the system's an absolute joke, and it is. And I'm just glad, Jan, that you speak out. I'm glad that, like, I talk to people, it makes them speak out, and they're already on a journey knowing that things are wrong. Just like you, I looked at your post and you messaged me, then I went straight to your YouTube, I watched all the videos, and I thought, and you say in the videos, you say, you know, you were just a worker before that, you never got involved in anything. You said to me on phone that, you know, you used to have respect for police, and then that's all changed now, and you're on a journey now to make people aware of what's going on, to make
I think I've probably always just been happy-go-lucky and a little bit naive, and I just thought that because I was a good person, I just assumed everyone else was as well. But I mean, rapists don't go around like robbers with a swag bag and a mask and everything. These are ordinary people, your priests, your dad's best pal, people who come into the house and laugh and joke and seem like a nice guy. These are your rapists. They don't walk around with a sign above their head saying, "Beware, I'm going to rape you." I mean, with hindsight, when I look at the amount of red flags this guy had waved at me and the amount of times he'd behaved inappropriately, I should have known better. But I honestly believed that he was just a bit of a chancer. And I just used to laugh it off and say, "It's not happening, just forget it." And I mean, I will admit, initially, when he started complimenting me, I was flattered. Everyone likes to be told that they look good, or they look well for their age or whatever. And I was flattered, but I was never tempted. It was kind of like my grandma used to, when I used to visit my grandma with Rob, she used to get all excited and give Rob a kiss and go, "Oh, darling, are you taking him out for dinner?" And Rob would say, "Yes, aye, we'll go out for dinner or not." And it was harmless fun, because you knew never in a million years was he going to be attracted to my grandma. And I felt like that about this guy at work. It was like, well, you can have a laugh if you want, because nothing's ever happening, because I'm not remotely attracted to you. And I wasn't looking for an extramarital affair with anyone anyway. And I thought, I've never, ever had casual sex in my life, never. And I most certainly wouldn't have picked an unattractive, older, pathetic-looking guy. I mean, I worked with young apprentices. If I'd been tempted to have an affair, I would have gone for a younger, fitter bloke. I wouldn't have gone for an older, uglier one. It just doesn't make sense.
Honestly, Jan, I'm just Thank you for coming on and talking.
Thank you for having me.
Honestly, anytime, and come and visit the site more often. I mean, there's other people on here who are more experienced than me in talking about things and stuff like that. There's people on here who know more about the Freemasonry, and we have people on the site who are well versed in law as well.
I mean, regarding the Freemasonry, I don't really know much about it myself either, but what did that have to do with a grievance procedure? Why did he feel a need to bring it up in a grievance meeting if it wasn't relevant? It's things like that now that I'm healing more, I can sort of pick things to bits and think, why was that even brought up in a grievance meeting? What relevance did that have at all to sexual harassment?
Like I said, I'm going to do a little bit more work on the Freemasonry bit, but there is people within the Wake Up UK know more about that, and law as well. I mean, we don't know the law properly. If you had known more of the law before all this happened, then you might have been able to push or help yourself or get more.
Because it wasn't a planned thing. I went into the process with blind faith that I was telling the truth and the right thing would be done. I didn't even read the sexual harassment policy. I'd suffered a breakdown and it was a cry for help. It was like, please don't make me go and work with him again. I can't do it anymore. And I just wanted someone to say, yeah, well, we knew he'd been sexually harassing you, so we're going to take the problem away. I didn't even want him sacked. I didn't even demand him sacked. I just didn't want to work with him. I wanted him moved to a different area, which was perfectly possible. I mean, this could have been sorted out within CITB if they'd just handled it correctly. It didn't have to get to a legal matter. They were the ones that made it impossible for me. They made a decision early on that I was the easiest one to get rid of. He had been with the company for 20 years. And obviously, if they dismissed him, it would have been an admission of liability that they had allowed me to be harmed in the workplace, which would have gave me a claim for compensation. No, I didn't want it. I didn't want to claim compensation for them. I wanted to go to work. I wanted to do my job and earn a living. And I wanted them to do the right thing, and they didn't. And that was all I wanted.
Have you worked since this?
Well, that was another thing. The union solicitor said that if I didn't take a job, I couldn't claim loss of earnings because I would be deemed to have made myself unemployable. So I says to her, I'm not ready. I was so scared. And she said, well, you can't claim. She says, I can't tell you to take a job or not. She says, but you can't claim loss of earnings unless you take a job. So I went to work for a charity. It was a paid job, but I went to work for a charity. And when I went to the interview, I told them, I said, I'd had dealings with the charity through CITB as well. And I said to the woman there, I said, I didn't leave my job at CITB. I said, I was sacked. And I says, but I'm taking them to an employment tribunal because it was unfair dismissal. And I told her why I was sacked. And that was at the interview. So I thought I was very transparent and very honest about the whole situation because I thought I would need time off to go to the employment tribunal anyway. So I wanted to be clear that this is what was going on. And they offered me the job as an employer liaison officer, and I could do the job. I was managing fine. But every time that the Unite solicitor contacted me, she was trying to bully me into accepting a settlement. She kept phoning saying, I need a decision and I need a decision now. And I said, I don't want to settle. I don't want to settle. And every time she phoned me, I would get upset and then I would finish up crying at work. And I was never the type of person that would cry easily. But because I was under so much pressure and I was suffering from post-traumatic stress, I was very defensive. And then, of course, when I cried, the manager at this charity said to me, I don't think you're ready to be back at work. And I said, I need the money. I need to earn. And she says, oh, we're here to support you. But they then used it as a stick to beat me and said, we want to extend your probation. We want to extend your probation again. And I was doing the job. I was achieving all their targets, and they kept extending my probation and stupid things. And in the finish up, I said to them, I turned around and said, I can't do this anymore, and I left. So I did it for about 8 months, and it was horrendous. I had anxiety. I was upset because I was going through the legal process, and I felt that I can't blame the charity entirely, because, like I say, I was still not in the right place to have been working. But it left me feeling like I had been judged again. And I thought that the last thing I needed after what I'd been through was for anyone else to not respect my honesty. So I walked away from that job. And then the United Solicitor said to me that, she says, well, you can't claim loss of earnings because you walked out of that job, so you made yourself unemployable. And I said, I shouldn't have been in a job in the first place because I wasn't ready for it. But she says, well, that was your choice. And I thought,
oh my God, honestly, so, and I just said earlier on that this union is one of the biggest unions. They funded the Labour Party 12 million for the general election last year. So it's not like they haven't got the money or the ability to look after the union members. And I can imagine how many people this sort of thing has happened with in the past, and it's never gone, it's never been reported, or it's gone the same way as you.
Well, if you're forced to settle out of court, you're not a statistic.
Yeah.
I mean, CITB paid me my settlement money on the 15th of the month, so it went through the normal pay run, so it just showed up as wages. So I mean, if they were audited, it's not even going to show up as a compensation payment anyway. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Honestly, I'm getting a bit angry now, but I always do. It's just my passion in me. I'm not going to beat anybody up, but I'll tell you what, honestly, I'll give them a mouthful. Jam, thank you very much. Honestly,
thank you for speaking to me.
Respect for you for speaking out, doing videos. This is what we have to do. This is what we end up having to do, to tell people, you know, how corrupt our establishment and our services are, and I've nothing but ultimate respect for you. You've took this on board yourself. You've made videos. You've been vocal about it, and well,
I have to thanks to Anna Brees for that. No, Brees Media. She was the one that did a charity training session down in Fleetwood, and I actually drove 7 hours to attend it because it was funded by the sales of Mike Taraga's book, Meat Rock Boy. And he funded the course, and Anna Brees delivered it along with John Wedger. And so, I mean, I was in amongst some really, really powerful people, some whistleblowers and victims of child sexual abuse. And Anna Brees gave them a voice. She gave them the ability to be heard. And I must find it's a brilliant media. If you can make videos, people will sit up and pay attention to a video more than they will reading a post.
Of course they will. I mean, a lot of us in this group know John Wedger's seen some of this stuff he's done. And the place you're going on about, who set this thing up at Fleetwood, did you say?
It was through Mike Taraga. I can send you a link afterwards. Mike Taraga's actually, he's terminally ill now. He's not a well man at all. And I think he suffered a stroke last year, and he still continues to fight to be heard. He was actually sexual abuse. He was in the care system and he was abused, and was part of the Meat Rock boys that were passed around Edward
part of
Heath.
the beach home, wasn't it?
Yes, he's got links to Beach Home Warriors and that, yeah.
I think our friend, we've got a friend here called Jimmy the Hat, and he's spoken. He's had him on his show a few weeks ago speaking.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So I mean, I went to Fleetwood just to do the course because it was an opportunity that something inside me said, you've got to do this. And again, I mean, I have no income. I funded my travel down there on a credit card. I put it all on a credit card just so that I could attend, because I desperately thought that I need to be heard. I need someone to give me a chance. I need to get my life back again. I just want to be, I don't want somebody to come and gift me a lump sum of money. I'm willing to work for it. I'm willing to earn it. But because I have spoken out and I've been so vocal, I'm now seen as a troublemaker. And I think, I'm not a troublemaker. I would run a mile from trouble, but I'm a justice seeker. And I think there's a difference. And for a while, I deactivated my social media when I was applying for jobs because I desperately needed the money. And then I thought, I fought really hard not to be silenced over this. And then I sat back and I thought, what am I doing? I'm silencing myself. And I thought, why did you fight CITB not to sign a non-disclosure and then gag yourself? And I thought, if I go to work again, I have to work for someone who will employ me because I've done this, not in spite of it. I need them to say, well, this woman has integrity, she's honest, she's open, and she fights for what she believes in. And see that as a value and not a weakness. Because I fight for my friends. I would do anything to help anyone, so long as they're doing the right thing. And I'll continue to do that.
Jan, honestly, I've a lot of respect for you, girl. Honestly, you do. Just coming out and doing the video, it's a big step. I've seen this. We people on this site, we've supported beach home victims. We support other groups. There's a group near me called PAG UK who does to do with child abuse from homes and stuff like that. We support all these kind of groups and stuff. And there's people in like our cause who've interviewed John Wedger and other people like that. We're big on it because we want people to be heard, and we want justice, and we want everyone to have equal rights, and we just don't have that. We don't have it, and people are not listened to. It makes me angry, but my anger makes me work harder, makes me go out things, makes me do videos, makes me get in contact with you, makes me go on demos, makes me shout for people, makes me support people. That's what my anger does. I mean, I could be a person where my anger and I have to smash something up, but it doesn't. I channel it to do things like I'm doing now. And I'm feeling really angry and upset now. I will do tomorrow when I'm talking to my mate Tracy, but I'll just focus and hope that like my voice talking to people will wake people up, and that's all I want to do, and hopefully change the system and make life better for those people it's going to happen to and those people who it's happened to as well.
Well, I'm just trying to raise awareness, but it's really difficult when you're a nobody because nobody listens to nobodies. Yeah. So that's why I set up a YouTube channel. But even my YouTube channel, I've only got a handful of followers because it's so difficult to get people to follow, because sexual abuse and rape are not subjects that people want to put on their Twitter page. They don't want to publicise that because it's nasty and it's distasteful and nobody wants to speak about it. So therefore they'll like my videos and they'll comment underneath, I'm so sorry this happened to you, John, but they won't share it because they don't want filth like that on their page. And then you think it's so difficult because the only way I will ever be heard is if people share my videos, if people share my YouTube channel, if they subscribe to it, and then my voice can maybe just get a little bit louder so that somebody somewhere, the right person will hear, the person that can make a difference will hear me.
Honestly, Jan, don't ever think that you won't get known. I was a nobody. I was one of them nobodies. But I started to do videos, I started to do live streams, and then in a 4-year period, I had counter-terrorism coming to me because of my presence on social media. So it works. It works.
I didn't set out to become famous, but I want to be heard. Not to make me famous, to make the cause famous. I don't want just to hashtag Me Too and for it just to be like a slogan on a t-shirt that nobody gives two hoots about. I want people to sit up and take note that these are real people this is happening to. It's real lives that are being destroyed. And like I say, if I hadn't had Rob, I would be dead. And I think, how many others have they forced to commit suicide because they bullied them into silence? Because there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than being told you're a liar when you know you're telling the truth.
Yeah, of course. It's exactly the same for me. It's not that I wanted to be famous. I wanted people's voices to be heard, and I wanted people to see what's happening within our society, what's happening by our corrupt unions and police and stuff like that. And the more we talk about it, the more people wake up. Um, I've I've physically got people to vote for the first time in their lives, so I know I can make a difference. They listen to me, and a lot of people will like what I said because they hear it's coming from an honest heart, and you know I do care. But honestly, they just keep going, Jan. You must come on here again. You must come on again when I find some stuff about Freemasonry. We'll come on, and then we'll talk, and we'll find more stuff out. We'll research. We'll look into stuff. We'll find more stuff so we can tell people what it's like and what they're up against. And but Jan, honestly, thank you very. I'm not going to take no more of your time.
It's been quite a long interview, eh?
Thank you very much, Jan. Honestly,
Thank you for having me.
Big respect. I put your channel, I put your YouTube channel into the chat, but I have my own YouTube channel, and I'll be putting your YouTube channel on mine, so you'll get more subscribers. People who watch your videos, and they'll see what's going on. And there's hundreds of people, dozens of people who I've met who've had this sort of like discrimination against them. It might not have been a rape case or anything like that, but they've been discriminated against one way or another, and we'll just build it up from there.
Hello,
but
John.
Jan,
Can I just ask
a lot of respect to you.
Hello, John. Can I ask John if she would like you yourself and myself to upload a copy of this interview to our YouTube channels?
Yeah, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll ask you first. Okay, I'll send John a copy of this for him to put on his channel, and I'll put it onto my channel as well. I'll get a bit more views.
Yeah, Jan, honestly, thank you very much, and keep talking, keep doing videos. And again, if we can save somebody through going through this, or we can help someone who's been